Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from a crappy hotel bathroom in Mount Holly, New Jersey. This is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show. Welcome to my bathroom, everybody. Yeah, I know a lot of you are thinking, hey, Raghunath's got a cool backdrop. What's going on? You can see a shower curtain behind me, and you can see a rolled toilet paper in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen if you're watching this on Zoom. If you're listening to this or seeing this on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, we do the study of the Bhagavatam every day. And it's times like this where I really didn't want to wake up. All the kids are sleeping in the other room. I didn't want to wake up and go into the bathroom and do this. But that accountability keeps me on track. And I'm grateful for everybody here. Something about reading the Bhagavatam every day makes you focus on changing yourself instead of trying to change external factors that we can't control. You know, I can't complain about the wind. If it's windy, I can complain about it, but nothing's going to happen. I can't try to figure out how can the wind change today. I can change. I can set a different sail. So the Bhagavatam is about radical responsibility. Our spiritual life is about radical responsibility, not pointing the finger out there to things that are out of my control, but setting a different sail instead of complaining about the wind. Kaustubha, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for that uplifting message this morning, Raghunath.
Thank you. You're welcome. And we're going to a wedding today, and we're psyched about the wedding. Mara was going to cater that wedding. Do you know that?
Was going to?
She was going to. They heard her reputation of Columbia County's
Number
best.
one. Yeah.
But I don't know. She's sort of like,
What happened?
I think it's too far to bring her vegan
it's a little
meatballs.
far to be traveling. And
But it was such a special opportunity.
it's so special, and I also have no staff whatsoever right now.
She's a little staffless.
Staff.
Yeah, I'm low on,
That makes it more difficult.
Some would call it a staph infection.
Very
That was not even funny.
good.
Anyway, it's, but so we're up here. And I don't know if you saw my post on Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, people, it's Raghunath Yogi. But I did something both spiritual and uplifting yesterday. Me and Lev, a regular Zoomer also, and we decided to grout the backsplash of the kitchen. Now, I've always relied on talented people to do things. I rely on people like Banjo Mike and who else do I rely on? I've got regular people who come to the farm and help me fix things that are broken, because I always scripted myself as the guy who can't do practical things. But I've made a commitment this year. I'm going to learn practical things. And I started with grouting. Check. I've grouted. And I feel good about myself. And we didn't know what we were doing, and we did it. I'm not sending my kids to college. I'm sending my kids to YouTube. They want to learn how to do anything. Heart surgery, YouTube. Clinical psychology, YouTube. Grouting, YouTube. It's all there. What do you think about that, Kaustubha?
Fascinating. Absolutely.
But most of all,
I'm happy for you. If that's
Thank
what you
you.
mean. I'm happy for you.
Have you ever grouted?
I've never grouted, no.
He's never grouted. He's never grouted. This is the year, Kaustubha, grout. So listen to this. I've always went to India, and all over India, you see these tiles, like bathroom tiles or kitchen tiles, but tiles of gods and goddesses. And I've always thought, man, I want to find a tile store in India. We found a tile store. We were with the Polish princess, Eva, and she purchased this giant, beautiful tile that we were going to put in the kitchen. And it's back.
We've heard quite a bit about the tile on the show in the past, Raghunath.
Yes, well, go to my Instagram and check out
this wonderful tile.
It's a beautiful tile, and it's right in the kitchen, and we're excited.
It
All
is
right.
beautiful.
Anyway, people who are listening on Facebook, this is Questions and Answers Day, one of our favorite days of the week. If you got a question, you mail it to Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Anything you want to say about the wedding? We're going to the big wedding today.
It's going to be a wonderful occasion to meet many beautiful bhakti yogis and yoginis coming from far and wide. So I'm really looking forward to it. This is the kind of event where you run into people you haven't seen in a long time, and I think it'll be fun. It'll be beautiful.
My kids are here. We're all dressed up. You notice my wedding kurta I'm wearing?
Yeah,
you like
wedding
this?
kurta. I was expecting something a little more flowery, like
This is super flashy, man.
not flashy. It is. I was expecting flowers. That's all.
Okay. All right.
From those ones you got from gopiskirt.com.
I don't think those are wedding appropriate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I needed something a little bit more formal and silky.
Okay.
Yes, but I'm going to be dancing like a madman today. I'm excited for that. My kids are here. We're all dressing up. Gauravani's coming. His kids are coming. I'm all excited.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And tomorrow
why
at
don't
the
we get
Bhakti
started?
Center. I'm going to see you at the Bhakti Center. If you're going to my program at the
Tomorrow.
Bhakti Center, I think it might be sold out. And Kaustubha is going to show up too. It's our special guest. I wasn't supposed to say that, but he's going to show up after lunch.
Because I hadn't confirmed it yet.
You haven't said, I know. So I said it publicly to put it
Okay.
out there to the universe.
But another happening thing, if you can't make it to that because it's sold out, I believe from 2:30 or from 2 until 5:30, I believe it is, in Washington Square Park, there's going to be devotees doing kirtan because so many are coming from this wedding, because so many of Genevieve and Kula's friends are like incredible young kirtaneers, right?
Yeah.
It'll be mind blowing. And Washington Square Park somehow it's become like the place in the city. It's always jam packed. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be really wild and fun.
All right.
But Washington Square Park tomorrow,
Yeah, I think my kids are going actually.
and then no show tomorrow. We got to mention that, right? Did we say
There's
that?
no show tomorrow. Crazy
Back
travel.
on Monday at the regular time.
Okay.
All right. So shall we get into the questions?
Yeah, let's dive right in here.
Any other announcements, Mara? Let's check in with Mara.
We got a Bhakti recovery group meeting at 9:30 today. I think that's it.
Okay, that's it. No shloka study. What's maybe
Locust study is tomorrow at 9:30, but Nityananda
tomorrow,
Chandra.
9:30.
Yeah, so good.
All right, let's get into this.
Tomorrow at 9, I'm sorry.
Okay. Why don't I read this question, Raghunath? Okay, this is
Okay.
for both of us.
Okay.
There's a lot of questions about chanting japa, right? This meditation on beads where you chant Mahamantra, one on each bead, and you sit alone and you're quiet and you meditate on it. We got two people writing in questions, and one of the questions is like a list of questions, and then there's another question that relates. So I'm going to read both of these, and then we're just going to go through all the questions, okay?
All right, great.
Now, the first one is coming from our dear friend, Stephanie Berman.
She's here today, live on Zoom.
Great. And actually, she asked a question. It's next Tuesday that you're going to the Bhaktivedanta Manor. Is that correct, Stephanie? I don't see her. Do you see her?
Yeah, I'll see her.
Well, we're going to try to line something up, assuming that that's true. Hook her up with someone there to show her around. So I'll read her letter first. Stephanie is such a qualified person and kind too,
We were just glorifying her yesterday on the phone. She doesn't even know that.
Yeah, she's like, she did so much service for the Bhakti Center. She's a super high level person when it comes to. She was like a creative director for an advertising agency and award winning and all that, and she continues in that service. But she was so helpful to us, and just ready. She even the Govardhan Nicoville. She just jumped on a plane and flew out there just to help them for a few days, and jumped on a plane and flew back. Really nice. Any case, here we go.
What do we got?
Greetings, dear Kaustubha, Raghu, Mara. I have a few questions today. First, a few for the with this. I'm sorry. Let me start over again. First, a few for the Wisdom of the Sages Q&A related to chanting the Mahamantra. I was very fortunate to learn how to chant at Govardhaniko village in a class taught by Raghunath, with the sun rising in the background over the hill. How idyllic, huh?
It was idyllic.
An inspiring and auspicious beginning, although at first it didn't feel like something I would intuitively incorporate into my life. However, during the teacher training at Super Soul, we again practiced chanting, and I started to apply it. I strongly believe that I have seen the benefits, and while I'm not chanting 16 rounds a day, and sometimes even miss one, I miss it when I miss it when I miss it. If you know what I mean. Recently,
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. I totally get it.
recently, some questions have come to mind. They come from a place of wanting to be respectful, so I would appreciate your guidance. First of all, I wear my beads, which are silver ones, around my neck. I like the reminder and the constant presence. I have a bead bag but don't use it. Is that considered disrespectful? Second, you know what I'll do? There's another letter that's like totally a similar kind of question but related to job. So I'm going to read that letter, and then we're just going to go through all the questions, okay? So we don't
Okay,
read them
let's do it like
twice this
that.
way. Yeah. Okay, and then at the end of her letter, she writes, oh no, that's part of the question. Okay, then the next person's question. This is coming from Liz via email. Okay, and she writes, "Thank you so much for your podcast. I listen with rapt attention every day on Spotify, and I'm so glad to have it. I have a question. I have a question about chanting. I find I am a much better person after chanting. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
A
Me
lot of
too.
emotions. You do
Me
too.
too. I'm a better person when I chant. I didn't chant today. I woke up and I didn't
I hope
chant.
hope the show's
I'm
gonna
in a
work out.
bathroom all morning. I did pranayama in the toilet. It's ridiculous. I'm having a really rough morning. Except for this shirt, I feel a little messy.
That shirt helped though.
The shirt lifted me high.
Okay, she writes, I find I am a much better person after chanting. A lot of emotions come up which I chant through. The latter rounds are probably better. The former almost offloading. I feel a little guilty. I want to approach Krishna with love, and I feel like I'm chanting for him, not to make myself feel better.
Ooh,
I've
that's
tried to spend
great
yeah,
insight there.
yeah. I've tried to spend time working through stuff in other ways, journaling, exercise, talking it out, and then beginning my chanting. But, and now why don't we go ahead and take Liz's questions first, and then we'll go back to Stephanie's, okay?
Sure.
So here's what Liz writes. There isn't always time. I'm a single at-home mother of a 2-year-old. Time for myself is limited. And then also, it's not always particularly effective. And in the end, it's the chanting that sorts it out anyway. Is there a way I can offload before chanting? Or is this completely normal and I should stop feeling guilty about it? Okay, so you got that, Raghunath? She likes to chant a series of rounds in a day. You know,
Yeah.
rounds means chanting one. You have your beads in your hand, and there's 108 beads, and you chant one mantra for each bead. And so she's finding that when she sits down to begin her meditation, like the first few rounds, her mind's all over the place and thinking about so many things. And the latter ones, she's more focused and meditative. She's trying to figure out a way to, so that even the earlier ones, all of the stuff that's flowing through her head won't be there. Is there a way to kind of purge that, I suppose, right? Before you chant? What do you have to say?
Well, first of all, I want to say, as a man who's raised 5 children and in the process of raising 5 children,
as well as quite a few animals.
You're doing good. And this kid's 2 years old. It gets easier. That's an exhausting time of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you can even chant anything is quite impressive. But the idea of the holy name or chanting the holy name is it cleanses the mirror of the mind. So we have a pure soul theology. The soul is pure. It's not sinful. The soul isn't sinful. The soul is pure. We're all pure. We're actually all pure devotees. We just forgot. We're just a little covered. And so the chanting is going to sort of do exactly what it says. It's going to cleanse the mirror of the mind. And what's in the mind? All types of things. Happened this morning, happened last night, things I'm worried about, things I'm hoping for. And it just stays in the mind. As we raise our consciousness to sattva, and we do that by being regular in our habits of eating and sleeping and, maintaining things, then all of a sudden our consciousness becomes a little higher. The mind becomes a little bit more settled and a little bit more peaceful. That's the best thing you can do. But in this stage of life, you're raising a 2-year-old, the mind is going to have a lot of stuff going on. So I think it's very, very normal to have to work through those beginning rounds just to get the mind settled. And that's another great side benefit. You're right. We are doing it to develop love of God. That's the highest thing. I shouldn't be chanting for me, but we come into it like that because we want to experiment or we want some order in our consciousness. And chanting the holy name does that. And then as you hit that puncture through that breakthrough, then it's an offering of love. So I don't think there's anything wrong with what you're doing. I think you're like right on track, and I wish you luck in the raising of the kid. That's and you being Krishna conscious, truthfully, it's the best thing you can offer that kid. It's the best thing. And play a lot of kirtan around the house for the child's benefit and your benefit as well. When you can't hold those beads in your hands and you're just hustling around like a mom. Kaustubha?
Thank you, Raghunath. I'll add this, building on what you've said. It sounds like, what Liz is asking. There is a response to that, like in the tradition, right? Like, in other words, before you meditate, generally you don't just jump into things. There's always something that precedes it, right? There's always an intention setting. There's always a prayer. There's even practices. Like, for instance, there are yogis that before they sit to chant their japa, they do pranayama, right? A little few minutes of pranayama helps settle the mind. Even if you're not going to do it in that formal way, even just sitting down and taking, 10 just nice long deep breaths, let your mind settle, right? Just like don't just necessarily just jump right into the activity, but settle into it. Now, another, before puja, this is often done before chanting japa. Another thing people do is they do achmana, which means where you put water into your palm and you chant a mantra into the water, and then you drink that water so that your body becomes infused by the power of the mantra. There are things like this. What's another thing that people do sometimes is they'll take out a book that is like quotations on, you could say, the glory or the potency of these mantras or of these names. Like, there's a book called Sri Namamrita, right? And you take that book and you read a few quotations. You slow down, take your few deep breaths, settle down, read those verses. This is the way you switch from one level to the next. You're going to move you're going to let go from one world that you're living in. You're gonna, although you're still sitting in the external world, you're going to focus your attention on the internal. And so don't be afraid, go ahead and do a little something to indicate the passing from one world into the other, And even just simple breathing can be enough. Or just a very sincere prayer,
I think that's great advice.
I think any of those things can help.
That's great advice. I just said, become more sattvic, but you actually gave ways to be more sattvic. The akshman, the sipping water, chanting mantras, the pranayam, and reading quotes, getting your mind settled, getting some inspiration.
Yeah.
I like yours
Make a little
better.
ritual.
Better answer, Kaustubha.
No, Raghunath.
You're better than me.
You came. You're better than me. You. Okay. So now let's get back to Stephanie's questions, okay?
Okay, keep this going.
We've got a list of them. So Stephanie says, first of all, I wear my beads, which are silver ones, around my neck. I like the reminder and the constant presence. I have a bead bag. So if you're not familiar with it, commonly the way, particularly in our lineage, right, when people meditate on this mantra in this japa, on the beads, we place those beads in a little bag, a little cloth bag, and then it's designed so that your hand fits in there, and comes out. Your finger comes out at the other end.
The pointer finger.
Your pointer finger comes out the other end.
Accusatory finger.
Okay, and then you chant with the beads inside the bag. And so Stephanie's asking, is it disrespectful? I kind of just like wear them. I wear them around my neck. Is it disrespectful not to have them in the bag? What do you say, Raghunath?
I don't think it's disrespectful. I think you gotta keep the main thing the main thing, and the idea is the beads are sacred. So you don't want to drag them on the floor. We don't like to bring them into dirty places like bathrooms and stuff like that. And sometimes when you wear them as jewelry, you end up doing things like that. Bead bags are great. They ever see pictures of, they were called yoga dundas that some yogis would carry too. They look like a mini cane for a little person.
Oh, to lean your arm on when you're sitting?
Like a half a moon, yeah. And they'd sit down and they'd put their wrist in that little half moon, crescent moon, and then the stick, and then would let the beads keep the beads off the floor. And they would just sit there with their little yoga dunda. So sometimes you see yogis or sadhus carry these little yoga dundas under their armpit because it actually switches the prana flow in the nose as well. Very interesting. Yoga dundas. Google that.
Anyway, I'm going to get back to your yoga dunda, but please continue.
Then there's bead bags. Also, the tradition uses bead bags. And I would like to bring back, ever see those sock bead bags? They look like socks. I want to bring those
kind
back.
Of squarish. Well, I've got one. My winter one is like
shaped upside down.
I've got a winter bead bag like that. So my whole hand fits in there and you keep it warm.
Yeah. But I think for the most part, she's doing great.
So what I'll say about that one is that in our lineage, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage, generally we chant with the beads in that bag. And there may be other lineages that don't. But I've never seen any scriptural reference to that. I've never seen any authoritative kind of statement, regarding that. I think someone has to go to the bathroom. Is that what's going on here, Raghunath? Okay, maybe you turn the camera off. There you go. Okay. So in any case, I've never seen anything. It's not a principle, it's a detail, right? But the detail is meant to serve a principle. And that principle is, and Raghunath was speaking to this a bit, is that we want to keep this practice as far as possible within our own mind. Keep it sacred. One way, that's in a sense, that's why the beads are put in the bag. It's like, I'm going to care for these well. I'm not going to let them drag around. I'm not going to have them on the ground. I'm not going to have them dropping on my foot when I'm sitting and chanting. They're in the bag, and in this way, the beads are sacred to me in my mind, and by cultivating that sentiment, it helps open up my mind and my heart, you could say, to chanting this mantra in the right mood. But that's a detail. It's not a principle. The principle is that we want to have that sentiment. The principle is that we want to hold within our heart a sacredness for the beads, because the name that we chant on the beads is sacred. And so when we sit and when we hold those beads in our hands, we want our mind to respond like, now this is sacred. And so having the beads in the back can do that, but it's not essential. So it's fine. It's fine with what you're doing, but just try to. I would say then try not to drop them on the ground. Try not to let them drag sit on the ground or touch your feet or things like that. Also, part of that is that traditionally we don't touch them, we don't hold them with our left hand. And that's kind of something like, just like when, like in our American culture, when you go to shake someone's hand, you don't go with your left hand, you go with your right hand, and that's considered like respectful. And so with the beads, it's something like that. So having them in the bag helps you just keep your right hand on them. But again, not so simple. But you know what, Raghunath's thing, and now he's gone, he'll come back. I never thought of that before, but that's I've seen pictures and images of yogis sitting down. They're sitting up with their back straight, and they have that little dunda. It's like a little stand, Again, it's just a little stick on the top of the stick, there's a little curved spot where you can place your arm. And this way, you're sitting down, but your arm is resting on that stick. And I never thought of it, but now I'm making the connection, because when I chant and I find my mind is going off in different places, what I do, and I find this to be very effective, is I just bring my beads right up to my heart and I hold them right here. And I find when I do that, automatically my mind becomes more focused on the mantra. And I just hold them right here at the heart. And so if I could see how if you had one of those little sticks and you're holding it and you're seeing what it does is it brings, it's hard to hold your arm up like this for hours at a time, but if you have that stick, then you're leaning against it and it's much easier, and you're looking at your beads and holding them right up high, right by either by your heart or like more clear in your vision. And I could imagine that could be helpful in meditating, bead after bead, one mantra after the next, I think when Eddie Stern, my old my buddy and Ashtanga yoga teacher, he talked about how Ashtanga yoga, which is a vinyasa style of yoga, vinyasa style means that in between each asana, there's a series of movements and breath that are, in a sense, stringing together each asana, right? If everyone can understand. You go into one asana, then you come up, you make a few movements and a few breaths, and then you go into the next asana. And as you go into each asana, you concentrate the mind. And then as you go through the movements that are to transition to the next asana, it's almost like cleaning the slate. And then you focus your mind again, into the next asana. And so japa is like that. He was telling me that vinyasa yoga is conducive for chanting japa. And I began to understand it, because it's you focus the mind, and then in a sense you relax, you clean the slate. It's almost like if your mind were like a chalkboard, and you wrote the mantra on that chalkboard as clear as you possibly can, nice and beautifully. And then when you're done, then you cleared it, and then you focused and wrote it again. And then you cleared it and you focused and wrote it again. So in one sense, as you go from bead to bead, you chant the mantras clearly and you let it ring in your mind. And then as you go to the next bead, it's kind of like, okay, next, clean slate, next mantra. And you chant it as clear, and let it ring in your mind again. So I could see that little arm stand could be helpful for that, just going bead to bead to bead. But in any case, the most important thing is that you feel a sense of sacredness when you hold those beads in your hand, and particularly hold the mantra very sacred in your thoughts and in your sentiments. Okay, next question. Like many of us, I lead an overbusy, overscheduled life, and while I am sure it is better to sit and focus completely on chanting, I do find myself getting around in while doing other things, in order not to miss it. Walking the dog, taking public transport, and even, I fear to admit it, while I'm strapped into a decompression machine 3 times a week for my herniated discs. Is the multitasking disrespectful? I'll share a little story, Stephanie, and I think this will help. I love your concern that you want to do it right and be respectful, and really it's that respect that's being cultivated. And again, we start to speak more about details and principles. It's the principles that are the most important thing. But there's a story about Shatri Caitanya. And of course, in our lineage, we accept Sri Caitanya as Krishna himself, right? An avatar of Krishna, or who came and he had an inner purpose and he had an external purpose. And the external purpose, the meaning of his descent was really to spread this chanting of the Mahamantra. And it's said that at one time that he was so absorbed in the name that he just could not, he had such a taste for it that he couldn't stop chanting. And even when he was going to the bathroom, he couldn't stop. Like, for instance, generally we don't take our beads into the bathroom, right? It's just kind of like, again, it's just for the purpose of seeing them as very sacred. And so Sri Chaitanya, when he's going to the bathroom, he couldn't stop chanting. And he said, is this he was thinking, I think this is disrespectful. And then a little boy named Gopal, just a little boy, spoke to him and explained to him that no, chanting these names is auspicious and pure under any circumstance. And he gave the example of even when one's dying, which can be considered, commonly you're lying in a bed that you've been lying in a long time, and even you may not even your bodily, daily bodily things are not on the purest level. And somebody said, even in that condition, one is encouraged to chant. So what to speak of any other condition? No matter what condition one is in, chanting is always auspicious. And so then when Sri Chaitanya heard that explanation, he said, little Gopal, thank you for explaining that. Now you are my guru. And from that day on, he became known as Gopal Guru Goswami. He became an important leader and figure. So yeah, wherever you are, chant. When you have the opportunity to, you try not to, if all of your chanting is being done while you're getting things done, that's going to be unfortunate, right? If you squeeze your chanting into, I only do it when I'm on the subway, or I only do it when I'm doing something else, then that's not ideal for sure. We want to take it as very sacred. We want to set aside time specifically for that name, as if it's someone, knowing that name is non-different from Krishna. We want to show that love and that respect to someone. We don't want to be disrespectful. Just like if you had to talk to someone and they were kind of always busy doing something else while they're talking to you, you wouldn't feel that connection. So set aside some time that's solely for this chanting. But also chant all the time. Chant 24 hours a day. Chant when you're on the subway. Chant when you have to do something else. And certainly, when you're strapped into a decompression machine, I would definitely chant at that time, maybe more desperately than any other.
I got an MRI. I was chanting during an MRI. That's when they like put you in that tube. You can't move. I was like, I'm definitely chanting. It's like being in a coffin.
Yeah.
Let the chanting be the background, the soundtrack to your life. I think I thought it was great that she was saying that. Let it just be the soundtrack that's always playing in the background.
Okay, you ready for the next question, Raghunath?
Yeah, man.
So the next question, she asks, also, these situations are in public, so I'm internally chanting. You talk a lot about sound vibration, but is it okay, better than nothing, to silently chant the mantra? I'm not ready to be singing it out loud on an airplane. Is that you that have done that, Raghunath? Is that you?
I've sang it out loud on the airplane, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a sound. She's still hearing it. I always say that if the way you're chanting of it, you can't hear it, that's a problem. Like sometimes if I'll do silent japa, which is a type of way to do japa, you do it silently. But if the rest of the world is too distracting, then that's a problem. But if she's overly conscious about her speaking out loud in a public place, sometimes you see some devotee just walking around going blah blah blah, and they might be self-conscious of it, that they're chanting out loud, so they want to do it quietly. So if your self-consciousness is keeping you off your mind on the sound, then that's a problem. So do whatever you can do to keep it in that you hear it. And sometimes we hear it better in the mind, and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we have to say it loudly. I like chanting privately in the forest. That's my best, because then I like to say it really loud, like I'm talking to Krishna.
With the animals?
No, by the way, I've never seen a porcupine, and I've seen 2 porcupines in 2 days.
Get out.
What do you think of that? Me and
How close did you get?
One really close, both of them.
Really? How close?
Yeah, like next to it.
And you weren't afraid that it would shoot?
It was on my Instagram feed yesterday.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I was trying to figure out.
I was so caught up in your grouting, I entirely missed the porcupine.
It was one of these things. Everyone's like, no, they shoot their needles at
what
you.
What they call quills?
How far can they shoot them? Mara, can you search? I know you've got a lot to do in the kitchen this morning, but can you research how far they can shoot those quills? I think what's happened is, are we in a full moon right now? Is that what's going on?
I don't believe so.
We just had a Odyssey, because I think there's a certain time during a full moon in the spring where all these animals come out of hibernation. Like you start seeing bears. Mara, can you see if porcupines hibernate?
Well,
they don't shoot their quills, says Mike.
It sounds like they don't shoot their quills.
Okay,
they touch them.
That is an old wives' tale.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see if porcupines hibernate? Can you check that out? That's been on my.
Okay, so in any case, what were we talking about? You chant. Oh yeah, we were chanting. Oh, should we chant out loud? Right.
Yes.
Were you done with that? Should I?
Yeah. What are we talking about?
Somehow we got to porcupine. You like to go out in nature and chant.
Chanting in nature. Do they hibernate?
Yeah, they don't hibernate. They're solitary by nature, but they often den with other porcupines in the winter. They stay in their
another
nest
myth.
in bad weather, but they don't hibernate.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
They don't shoot their quills.
That was quick and thoroughly answered.
Thank you. I'm in such a classic. I'm doing the show from the toilet today. This is such all morning. I was like, this would never happen to Kaustubha. This would never happen to Kaustubha. He would never let this happen. I'm having
I
that
had to
moment
do it.
right
I do
now.
it. You're doing what you have to do, Raghunath. You're doing what you have to do. So my regarding the question of is it okay to chant silently in the mind? It's certainly okay. And as a matter of fact, there are ancient texts that talk about chanting japa, and there it's actually mentioned. In one sense, it's considered a higher level of chanting, meaning that to do it, one really should be more qualified, because if when we're less qualified, we chant out loud, and the sound helps to bring our mind to the mantra. And one more qualified doesn't even need to hear the sound out loud. They can bring their mind to the mantra without that. But in any case, if you're in a social position where it's going to be very, very awkward for you to chant out loud, absolutely, chant silently in your mind. No harm whatsoever. It's wonderful that you do that. And just yesterday, I also I was doing something yesterday that in a sense was breaking. It was certainly unorthodox. And I was, I have this crazy, because we do Wisdom of the Sages all the time, and I do a lot of study in the morning, and whereas most yogis will do their japa chanting early in the morning, it's ideal time. My morning's all taken up, and so I generally chant my 2 hours or so of japa in the afternoon, which is not in many ways not ideal. Yeah, but I like to go to the park a lot, and so yesterday, I was in the park. This kind of a little bit chilly day, but the sun was shining. I'm taking in the sun, but and I'm out there on the sheep's meadow where like a lot of people hang out. And when I sit up, I'm kind of seeing everything that's going on. And part of the reason I'm out there is just to contact the earth, and to kind of like ground myself with the earth, my nervous system and all that. And so I just lied down flat on my back, and I just put the beads right there on my chest. And I was chanting, my whole body on the earth. I felt the earth, I felt the wind, I felt the sun, and I chant the mantra. And when you're lying on the ground and you're chanting the mantra, I was chanting it out loud, quietly but out loud. And I was just feeling the vibration, and putting the vibration. It was really wonderful for me. I felt it easier to concentrate by lying down on my back and not seeing anyone, just seeing the sky or closing my eyes, than I did when I'm kind of more sitting up more in a more orthodox way, So we find what brings our mind to the mantra, and the sound can and will help. But if that's not ideal, then you chant your mind. Bring your mind. Ultimately, the idea is to bring the mind to the mantra. That's what we're trying to do. Whatever helps, we'll take it. If it doesn't help, we'll try to let it go. Right?
Like that. Like
You
that.
go with that?
Good.
Okay. Next question. I'm not really. Okay. Finally, I am in the UK. Oh, is she back already? Is that the point? Or is she in the UK?
Well, she's in the UK now.
She is. Okay. Finally, I'm in the UK, helping out my parents for a while, and seriously missing my classes with Ramit and Carla at Jaya Yoga in Brooklyn. Shout out there, Raghu.
Well, shout out to
Jaya Yoga. Ramit and Carla. She says, seriously missing Ramit and Carla and the community with the Wisdom of the Sages crew every morning. There's not much yoga to be had in this part of the world. So I set up my mat in the hallway here, and for the first time, I found myself wanting to chant a round of this japa, a round of this mantra, during my personal asana practice yesterday. So I did, trying to keep track of the count, integrating it with the breath. Of course, my mind would wander as it always does, so I would lose count and start over, but the mantra was always there underneath it all. It felt wonderful, really grounding the asana in service. Again, is this an acceptable practice? Raghu?
I lost my train of thought.
Okay.
I'm in a bathroom right now.
I thought you were about to come to with a really deep answer.
Really profound thing. No. My kid was in the bathroom. I was like, oh my God. I hoped he didn't get on camera.
Okay. I'm not sure if your mic is fully connected right now too. It sounded a little distant. So the question was, is it okay to chant japa, chant the mantra while you're doing your asana practice?
Okay. Whatever you can do. Whenever you get that mantra in your mind, yeah, you should have the mantra in the mind. I do it. I try to do it if I'm doing, when I do pranayam, I chant the mantra. When I do asana, you can chant the mantra. When I do it when I'm jogging. Why not? The mind is going to go somewhere. I think we have to start recognizing that the mind is just looking for things to squirrel out on, like go chase thoughts and scenarios. If we're in a good place, it sometimes goes to good things. If we're in a bad place, it goes to anger, spite, revenge, frustration. It sort of zeroes in on the same problems. So the mantra sort of can be an access point out of that anger loop, the frustration loop, the anxiety loop that can also be running in the mind, like a mantra, like your japa. Instead of chanting the holy name or thinking of Krishna as our meditation, my meditation is on revenge. My meditation is on frustration. My meditation is on lust or greed, etc. And these are things where we're trying to transform our consciousness. So the idea of replacing those thoughts with transcendental thought. Sometimes we don't even understand the transcendental thought, but if we can inject the mantra into the mind, all of a sudden it will start to give some clarity, like, oh, I've been thinking hateful things. I've been thinking of ferocious things, resentful things. This is problematic. And this is not only, it's influencing my emotional state of being. So you're going to notice something radical when you start to add, even if you're new at this, adding the mantra to regular thoughts and regular activities. Just breathe it. Say it quietly. Say it loudly if you're hiking alone in a canyon or in the forest, and add it to the mind and see what happens. Do an experiment for it. So I say yes, wherever and whenever.
Okay. And I will add to that, that chanting mantra while doing asana is not only like okay, it's actually like part of the tradition of doing asana, right? There are a series of asanas where one would chant. For instance, Surya Namaskar itself, right? There are
All
prayers
mantras to the sun.
Yeah, there are prayers, there are mantras to the sun that could be chanted as one's doing Surya Namaskar, from the Ramayana. So it's not only okay, it's kind of traditional. Now, I practiced Ashtanga yoga kind of seriously for about a decade or so, right? I went to Mysore and, and I practiced every day with Eddie in New York. And I would say the most important, for at least to me, the most important statement, instruction from Pattabhi Jois on Ashtanga yoga or in yoga in general is this, right? He was asked a question. I believe it was Eddie that asked him the question. He asked, how do we know when we're doing the asana correctly? All right. You know what he said, Raghunath?
Is this from Yoga Mala?
It's probably in that book, Yoga Mala.
I know at one particular time he said you should be meditating on your ishta, or your object of meditation, your deity of meditation during the asanas. I'm not sure if that's where you're
well,
going.
there's that although that may be Krishnamacharya, but in any case, that's there. But the specific quote that I'm speaking about, the question was asked, how do we know when we're doing the asana correctly? And the answer was when the mind is quiet.
Oh,
right? When the mind is quiet.
Too.
Now, when you think about that, it's kind of, it's in one sense it's kind of simple, but in another sense it's very profound. Physically, when you're doing an asana that you've mastered, right? That then when you go into that asana, your mind is very peaceful, it's very quiet. If you're practicing an asana that's difficult for you, that you've yet to master, particularly one where you're far from mastering it, then there tends to be a tension in the mind, right? You're internally you're like, right? It's like this is hard. But when you've mastered it, you go into it with ease. And quite frankly, in the entire Yoga Sutras, there's only a couple mentions of asana, but it says it should be sukham and stiram, right? So it should be like steady, and sukham means like happy or like at ease. And so you've mastered the asana when you're at ease. And when your mind is at ease, then you can chant a mantra in that mind. And again, it can ring like a bell in the mind, right? If your mind is not at ease, then you're like, then when you chant that, if you try to chant a mantra, it won't be very clear and effective. It won't ring clear and pure in the mind. But if you've mastered the asana, then you can chant that mantra in it. You're breathing, smoothly and steadily. And then when the mind is pure, and free of tension, and you chant that mantra in that asana, and it rings throughout your mind. Now we know, I've mastered it. Even if it doesn't look the most beautiful or whatever, that's not what we're trying to do, right? It's trying to get the mind somewhere, through the movements of the body, through the movements of the breath. You're trying to get the mind somewhere. And so when I used to practice Ashtanga yoga, I went through periods where I chanted extensively, as I was doing through every movement. And as a matter of fact, not only in the asana itself, but even in the transition. Like, for instance, one of the instructions in Ashtanga yoga was that the inhalation and the exhalation should be the same length, right? Now, one way to know that you're doing it at the same length is to chant mantras at a particular pace. And so if when you inhale, you say you inhale and you raise your arms up, and you're like, Om Jnana Timirandasya, and then you bend forward, Gyananjana Shalakaya. Because they're written in a certain meter, you can begin to move and particularly breathe in that same meter. This is why I'm not interested in listening to music when I'm doing asana, right? Because I'm trying to get my mind somewhere,
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes they're playing something like
Jay-Z.
I'm thinking something even a little more crazy, and they're playing, and it brings my mind back to a place sometimes, an anchor in a time when I used to listen to the particular type of music, and it's like I don't want my mind there during yoga. I want my mind on. It's one of those things. We can always tweak our yoga practice to sort of upgrade it. And it can start off with like, I don't move my body, and now I'm moving my body. That's a good thing. Hey, now I'm going to add some breathing to it. Hey, that's a good thing. Now I'm going to start to notice where my mind is during this whole thing. That's a good thing, right? Because sometimes you're doing a physical practice, and it can be all about you and your physical prowess and your physical beauty and your physical. And if I'm walking out of a yoga class feeling like I am this body, then check out my body. I've sort of defeated the purpose of yoga. It's a good thing, in one sense, but if my yoga practice is endorsing my body as my self paradigm, then I'm not getting the full benefit out of I could. So yeah, adding the mantra to it is like total refinement, it's a yoga hack of the century.
And even if like what I was doing was a little bit more involved, was like chanting, I had a whole series of Gita verses that I would go through, and in this way,
I remember you telling me this.
Yeah, I would go through a whole thing.
We both did a stung at the same time. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I would go through like the whole, Mangalacharna, all these different prayers to the great acharyas, the great teachers, and so on. I would go through, I don't know, maybe about like 50 Gita verses. Karuna could practice this. Get a Karuna going here, And I would go through Bhagavatam verses. I go through different songs, and I could just be chanting my mind for an hour and a half, just like going right through. Right. But even in one sense, it's hard to do that when you get to the asanas that are difficult, and then you're just making the whole thing. Then I would have to drop it, and just focus my mind on my breath to try to settle my mind.
See where your mind's at during
when you get to that second series in Ashtanga yoga, it's like, it's all these backbends. For me, it was very difficult. But even if you're not going to do that, consider this: if you practice asana, consider when you get into what's called the heart of the asana, right? Not the transition positions that you adopt in between asanas, but when you get into the heart of the asana, there, like for instance, in Ashtanga yoga, you take like at least 5 breaths there. Right. But you can take more, and in that heart of the asana, bring your mind to, let's say, Mahamantra, all right? And breathe at the pace of the mantra, chant the mantra purely, and I would say relatively slowly in the mind, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It could be the whole mantra, it could be half of the mantra, you breathe in with it, you breathe it out, breathe it in, breathe it out. Do your 5 breaths with the sole goal of having a mind that's totally clear and pure, and you're ringing the mantra through the mind, and then come out of that asana, and then go back into the next asana and do it again. Now you practice asana like this in a quiet place, right? Without an instructor telling you what to do or with what to speak of music and all that. You practice asana like this in a quiet place, and you again and again and again. You see, this is like japa, right? The idea is that the mind is like, it's this crazy program thing that we're stuck with, and it's stuck with all kind of ridiculous ideas, and we can't just flip a switch on it and make the mind what we want it to be. It takes repetition, it takes effort, it takes concentration. And so if every day, let's say, because I was doing Ashtanga yoga for like an hour and a half a day, right? And so I don't know how many breaths that is as you go through, like, say, the primary series, but how many mantras I would chant in that series. And you do that day after day after day after day after day after day. And, this is a principle in yoga, that when something is done with the right attitude, the right determination, and it's done without interruption, in other words, daily, and it's done over the course of a long time, it becomes firmly rooted in the consciousness. And so, is it good to chant while you're doing asana? It's ideal to chant while you're doing asana, I'd say, and I highly encourage you to do it. And that is, I think this was Japa Day. Stephanie goes on to say, thank you as always for your guidance. On a separate note, I'm driving down to London next Tuesday, and she's going to visit the Bhakti-yogi Manor. Please go there. Please make sure you see Srila Prabhupada's rooms. It's really, spend a little time chanting japa in there. There's certain places in this world that have like Srila Prabhupada's presence in a really profound way, and his quarters that they've kept exactly as they were back when Prabhupada lived there back in the 70s. It's a really, his presence is really there profoundly. I'm going to see, Stephanie, if we can line someone up to meet you there. Maybe if you could send us an email with what time of day or you think you may be there, and we'll try to line someone up for you. This
is the big estate that George Harrison donated to the devotees. Yeah. So it's a really special place as well. And it's gorgeous. Me and Kaustubha were both just there. And she was saying in her question, she was saying, I drove by this place every day and I never noticed it. That, what's that called? The frequency illusion. Once you start to learn about something, then you see it all the time. Oh yeah, I passed it hundreds of times without knowing it was there. Yeah, and the frequency illusion, people say, well, yeah, it's like the secret, your power of intention. And there's a truth to that. But we're not interested in just the power of any old intention. We're interested in the spiritual frequency illusion where we're seeing Krishna. And she's doing that now. Now she's seeing Krishna everywhere. This is a holy place. There's the number 108 again. Do you ever do that? It's always 108 when I look at my watch. Now, Raghunath, I got to be out of here on time today. Oh, all right. Okay. I'm sorry to cut me off. I'm talking about the frequency illusion. Sure. It's an incredible thing. Why don't you keep talking about the frequency? No, I'm getting out of this bathroom ASAP. I'm getting out of this bathroom. I got to make the most out of this day. I will see you, assistant priest, today. All right. I would like to assist you in some way too, Raghunath. What can I do for you today? I don't know. Horse? Get the horse ready? Get the horse ready. I'm riding a horse. I'm gonna look like maybe I could be the guy that just kind of walks behind you. Riding that horse. You're kind of like the Raj with your special kurta on, and I'll be kind of like the guy that's just taking care of everything for you. Yeah.